But one of the questions I get about setting rates is, how do we charge? Do we charge per word or per article? And this is one of the big debates in the freelance writing world. Now, I personally like to charge per article, and I will tell you why. I like charging per article because it allows me to set a range, and I don't have to worry about what happens in the final edit, and I don't have to chase down the word counts for the final edit. And that to me is very inconvenient. So basically I just say like, hey, I will write an article, my rate for an article of between 900 and 1100 words is X. So this does mean that my per word rate is going to be a little bit different. It will in fact vary a little bit depending on how long the article ends up being. But I also don't have to worry about what happens when somebody edits. For instance, if you write an article of 1,500 words, but the editor goes in and chops off 200 words and you're charging per word, well, now you're getting paid less, because a lot of the time what they'll do is they will actually pay you based on your published word count, not what you turned in. So if you decide to charge per word, make sure you clarify how that's going to work, and clarify how it's going to work if there are substantial cuts made to your article. So that's just kind of why I like charging on a per article basis versus per word. Another consideration is charging for the project. If you are doing a set number of projects or a set number of articles in one project, you might go ahead and give an entire project price. So when you do this, you do want to be careful, because you want to say, okay, well, what kinds of things am I doing? I've had packages where I have delivered like, okay, I'm going to deliver a newsletter article, a blog post, 2 emails, and then perhaps a case study or something like that. So it's part of one package that they're doing. And a lot of freelancers are running into this now, where you have different types of things. Like you might be required to say like, okay, we're gonna write a blog post, and now we want you to write the copy for what will be the Instagram story of that blog post, and a tweet to go with the blog post, and maybe a Facebook post, or we want you to write out a TikTok script that can be used. And so that kind of gets it more difficult as well, because you can't really charge it as an article. Per word might not quite get it done. So what it comes down to is you tweaking a little bit and saying, okay, for this total project, this is how much it's going to take. And that gets down to you thinking about how much you want to make, how much you get per hour that makes it worth it. And speaking of per hour, one of the worst things you can do is charge an hourly rate. As much as you can, do not accept an hourly rate, because what you end up with is well, you don't have more time, right? So if you get something done fast and you're charging hourly, you're penalized for that. You're basically penalized. But whereas when you charge per word or per article or even per project, if you finish fast, then you still get paid your money, and now you have extra time. So try to avoid an hourly rate as much as possible. I occasionally do charge an hourly rate for things like consulting, but for the most part, if somebody says they want an hourly rate, then I switch them over to a retainer model and say, okay, well, let's go ahead and do a monthly retainer. And once we hit a certain number of hours, or once we hit a certain number of articles written, or a certain number of pieces of content done, well, then we're going to charge you a very high hourly rate. And so there are different things you can do to tweak that a little bit, but do your best not to accept an hourly rate. One of the things many freelancers find, especially as they become more experienced, is that the better they are and the faster they get done, that hourly rate goes up. So accepting an hourly rate from a client means you're basically taking a pay cut. So what about you? How do you set your rates? Do you prefer per word? Do you prefer per article or per project? Have you ever done a retainer before? Let me know how you charge and what works for you. And then stick around next time for our next bit of freelance writing career tips.